what's up, everybody? This is Ben from the PB&Gainz podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Today is episode 3. We are talking all about the community farm with the farmers of the Berry Farm, Jeffrey and Renee Smith.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. It's my favorite place. So to give a little background on the Berry Farm, from my perspective, I've known them for probably 2 years, and they've done a lot of stuff for our gym community. They've come and done informational talks. They have been there to do dinners as well for our community. We've had some of our clientele be lucky enough to come out to their farm itself for their dinners that they put on, and it's a treat. I mean, they very knowledgeable, very helpful individuals. Kind of when you think of what a farmer is, they've taken that and then made it explode by like 100 because they're just good people. So that's my introduction. I'll let you guys introduce the Berry Farm itself, what you do, how you got here.
Sure.
Have at it.
The condensed kind of what we do is somewhat difficult. What we do often starts on a place where we talk about food, right? So like the easy introduction to the farm to say, well, what kind of things do you raise around the farm? So even what we raise has been taken on a life of its own, and say, we raise things that we feel very proud of the way that we raise them and the process in what we raise them. But I always like to tell people when we raise things, I use the phrase that we farm for flavor, so that we've started the process when it comes to putting things onto the plate. We keep that always in mind as we go about our daily life around the farm. Say that it has to be excellent at the end of the day. Otherwise, we don't have much of a leg to stand on about why we do what we do, which is the stuff I really want to talk about to other people is, well, why do we do what we do? But to do that means you have to be excellent at the end point anyway. So it's easier to talk about why we do what we do when you've already had Houston's best pork, or real pasture chicken, or honest grass-fed pasture-raised lamb. So we focus very much on being excellent for those kind of things. So we do raise lambs who live and spend their lives out on our pastures. We raise chickens who also get to live like a whole chicken out on the grass. We do pigs who get to express every pig behavior that they were given with out. Right now we're in our woods because it's kind of warm, so they've been out in the woods. But in addition to that, we also think that it's very important to put things like fruits and vegetables in there too. So we do blackberries coming this soon, and we do lots of citrus too, all of which are incorporated into the animal system as they're rotated around the farm. None of those animals live or stay in the same place all the time, so they get to be in our blackberry orchard and underneath our satsuma trees to do all those things that balance together. So that's what we do.
Gotcha. And I think like when people have this idea of a farm, it's like you have multiple acres and this big, huge kind of fields of hay and all these ideal images we have in mind. And so you talk about how you rotate your animals through. I think firsthand from a concern spectrum, you get people like, oh, that's just, you get pigs running through blackberries. It's pigs are nasty. I think, how can you dispel those rumors and myths right now?
The easiest way to kind of put a voice picture to what that kind of thing, the best way to do that is to see it. So if you're standing in our pastures, the light bulb kind of easily goes off. Oh, I get what you're talking about. But when we talk about pigs in blackberries or chickens underneath your citrus trees, we're talking about things that until very recently were incredibly common practices. It's only been kind of in the recent age, and I'm talking recent like late 40s, 1950s, that we started making everything in its own silo, where chickens were raised in long barns with no other animals, and pigs were raised in long barns with no other animals, and grass was on pastures was used for making hay, which are then fed to animals who were not on it. So we put these things in their silos starting in the late 40s, early 50s, and said, we run these kind of animals in this way all by themselves. But before that, lots of these things were integrated processes. So, for example, we make hay, we feed it to cows who are on dirt now in America, and other countries too. When before that, we used to put those same cows out on those same pastures to basically acquire the hay themselves rather than do it for them. and in return, they would fertilize that hay with their manure. Now we separate them and put chemical fertilizer on that hay, on that grass, to make hay to feed to that animal, to make it available. So we've just kind of done the same system, but we've just chosen chemicals instead of the natural process, and isolated those kind of things. So around here, we've tried to integrate, put those things back together, and say, let's use the more natural process, the one that's more natural, not just for us as eaters, but it's more natural for trees and more natural for the animals that are underneath of it. So like, this is not something that we kind of invented. This is something that our grandfathers would be very, very familiar with. Our issue is we do it with scale. So this is not infinitely scalable, which is the argument about why they're in the silos that they are in, is we could do a lot more in a lot smaller space if I did it in silos. So we've rejected the notion that we have to do something for the masses to change the masses. We feel our part for our community.
Yeah, I mean, you really emphasize the relationship amongst animals and ecosystem, and that's kind of one of those things you think of food is. I know when talking with our clients, it's like we've lost the relationship with food, and you think it's in some of these farms and huge industrial practices, they've taken that relationship from animal to ecosystem out of it as well, and in turn our food system has pretty much suffered.
Right. Well, and the animal to ecosystem is kind of I like the animal to ecosystem thought, but that's the step that once we peel back the animal ecosystem layer, we find that the distancing food from that thought is really tied to, we've also separated people from community. Sure. So like right on top of people from community is food. So part of that, now we get in, that was what we do. So now we get into why we do what we do, is because this farming in general, especially family farms, have had a very unique place in the community that used to be the fabric of America, that we've kind of unknitted on accident. And it didn't start with we stopped caring about each other. It started with we stopped caring about what that farm did, which was make food. So as we moved away from valuing the farm's role in making food, we also stopped valuing what that farm did, and then therefore started to unravel that kind of, well, the farm used to be the central portion of our community. So we've had a really big decline. At the same time, in 1950s, when we started divorcing the farm from the eater, and even a little bit before that, we also started doing the same things like divorcing people from there. And we started mass urbanization, and we started, all kinds of things changed around when we did that. That was not intentional. It wasn't our goal. But now we see this resurgence in trying to get back to that. We took food away from farms, we took people away from communities, and now we are trying to solve our problems like loneliness and depression and obesity all together. Yeah. And say, well, how did that happen? Well, in my opinion, one of the ways that happened was we stopped caring about the family farm as the center of our communities and moved away from that completely. So I like this conversation because it helps bring us back to what is that, how can a farm help play a role in that? It's not the only area. We stopped caring about lots of things and kind of knitted our communities together, but the farm was the easiest one because everybody eats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't ever escape food. I mean, people try. I mean, believe me, it's a pill for this, a pill for that, but you can't escape what real food is and what it can do for your body. And so you talked. I mean, that was the family farm, that idea, and now it's like, in turn, what do you think the family farm, community farm, can be now, present day?
Well, not to be kind of storm crow about this, but we've chosen food as our mechanism to begin this conversation. Mm-hmm. And like I said, we have to do food excellently to be able to have some kind of stand in that conversation. So if you don't make excellent things, you don't gain enough credibility. So we're very proud of what we make and say that we're proud of what we make and we think it's top-notch stuff. So even if the only thing you ever engage in with us and our family and our farm is we like what you make and it tastes good, we're happy that you can be eating wholesome, nutritious things for your family. But underneath that, engaging in the actual community that is the berry farm, which now reaches hundreds and thousands of people around Houston, it's more important that we, to engage in that farm, that it's more important that we know each other. Mm-hmm. And not to make this too simple, but everywhere I go, when people say, tell me about the family farm, I say, if you hear nothing else from me, at least now I want you to be able to say, I know a farmer, I know a guy, I know a wife, I know a family. It's been very humbling to live our lives so publicly which is not
Kardashian farmers.
Yeah, it was not intentional.
Yeah.
But these are the layers that after you eat chicken and have dinner with us, that we say we get to know people, and I want to know about the motivations that would make you do this. And those motivations were the ones that communities used to share. You know, it used to be being neighborly, being a family, being there when you needed somebody to lift something heavy.
Yeah.
Being that it was basic stuff that now we say, I don't know how to do that. I know a guy that I can borrow a tool from. I mean, these are all very basic things, right? But these things all used to be able to say, I know a guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think if we take honest assessment of ourselves, we would say to each other, I don't really have a whole big stock of friends. I mean, basic things anymore, right? Like,
Right.
When's the last time you sat at a table and had a meal with another family? I mean, those things used to be very commonplace things, right? Now we've kind of put all that stuff on the shelf. We've traded those things for something that was quick and fast, which we heard the message over and over would make us more productive and therefore lead a happier life, or it'd make me more free time. We don't have any more free time than we used to. I mean, people say, I'm too busy is still their number one complaint.
That's that badge of honor. Yeah, that's what we talked about that in the last podcast. Is busyness is really it's kind of this illusion. It doesn't really mean anything, and so I really agree. It's like you take away time from people, or they've taken it away from themselves, really, and all of a sudden they've eliminated friendships, happiness, and then you kind of see this huge correlation between a community dissolving from within, and it starts with those relationships we have with people, and then, like you said, at one of our dinners that I think really hit home with myself and a lot of the people that were there was like, now you know a farmer, you know a farmer's wife, that kind of aspect of it really hits home for a lot of us and can really impact a number of different things, which is huge.
This is the challenge that when we talk about now, we've talked a little bit about what we do and now why we do. When I talk about now what, Jeff, what now how do I live, or what's different, we're talking about all this is under the label of authenticity, right? Where it's like, well, what do we do? Well, first thing you do is start valuing authenticity, and these things will start to trickle back. And by authenticity means a whole lot of things, but authenticity means start getting back to the things that were basic foundations, to things that you believe are true. Not lowercase t true, capital T truth. Like, I believe in them no matter what. And then if it doesn't align with that value, stop. Really, it's that easy. Stop doing that. If my value is I want to be with other people, or I don't like being by myself, stop being by yourself. And that sounds very hard.
Easy.
It sounds too easy. But that's take honest account of ourselves. Be authentic with yourself before we start asking the world to be an authentic thing around me. Be an authentic person. So, like, an authentic person means take that real honest stock. And I know a farmer's now getting into meddling a little bit, but take honest stock of what things are important to me.
Yeah.
And when you start doing that, we'll start peeling back a lot of this commercial stuff. A lot of things that you think are distractions from us that we pursue and we work really hard for. Take that honest stock, and then take that really bold next step of stopping. Not even starting in a different direction. The bold step is stopping. No,
that's big, and I think most people don't know how to do that because it's so simple. And we've talked with clients, and amongst friends, is the more complex you make something, the better excuse you have not to do it. So if all of a sudden you're like, I can't do this because A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that's a lot of letters. Most people stop at C. But they get into that and make it so complex for themselves, they have their out and they have their excuse. Instead of saying, hey, guess what? You can just stop. It's so simple. And you can apply that to food, fitness, however, life in general, no matter what it is. If you can make it as simple as possible, you're more likely to do it, and you've just taken away that excuse. And I think that's where the fear comes in for most people, especially with food.
And this is why food and fitness are our platforms, right? This is what we do, and we want to do it excellently. But this is so complicated because now we're talking about our emotional connection to these things. The motivations that make us do these things. We got into farming because we decided we were going to stop the things that were not important. So it comes with a lot of sacrifices to live the farm lifestyle, but those sacrifices were ones that we weighed and said, I don't think I need those things anymore. Well, what do you think you need, Jeff? I think I need community. I think that's what happened. That's a big umbrella for lots of things, but what does community mean? It means I think I need people. That's what makes me...
It's very contrarian.
Yeah,
actually.
it is very contrarian.
It's weird to say that to be invested in community makes you a contrarian, but that's a sign of the times, I guess.
It absolutely is. And we're talking about when we looked for a thing that expressed ourselves, our creativity, our hard work, our dedication to those values, food is what rose to the surface. And we got to put all kinds of our values together on this farm. From we value where we want to know where good, honest food comes from. We want to do it differently. We want to be respectful to a place, to animals, to plants. We want to be all of that, but we also don't want to keep it to ourselves. Otherwise, we would be a homesteader, and I would do all the same things, and I wouldn't tell anybody else that I was doing them.
Be reading hobby farming magazines all the time.
Right.
Yeah, I have some of those. So.
But then the next step is, after that, that's the part that the berry farm has been called into, which is not just be a farm, not just be a homesteader. If you're going to be a farmer, that's different. Now you're talking about changing a community's fabric, and the best way to do that is never crystal clear, but it is always a commitment to be doing things that always put my opinions, which are risky, right? Like, isn't it so much easier to keep your opinions to yourself? But if you keep your opinions, like doing podcasts with friends, or writing your own blog, or engaging in social media, returning all those emails, speaking in front of groups of people, all those things, sure, they're my opinion. Some people are not going to like them, and some people are going to, critique that. But even that is community.
True.
And, that is even community doesn't have to be just like-minded people. Community is our people, whether they disagree or don't agree. It's our job to bring all those pieces to intersect to bounce off one another.
Yeah, I mean, you need. I think if you're living with a bunch of yes people, anyways, you're not really living. You're getting that kind of idea that everyone agrees with you, and so you're in a fake world as it is. And so, especially from your standpoint, and just curious, like how difficult is it to be? And it probably isn't difficult at all if you have those true beliefs. But it's like when people want you to change kind of what their idea of a farm is and do things in a way that suits them. Do you find that a challenge when people come here?
I find it a challenge before people get here. So it's very rare that people actually come to our farm, walk around with us, meet the animals, meet my children, and take in the whole experience and then ask me to be different. That very rarely happens.
That's a good point.
They usually come out here and say, I'm appreciative that you're here, I approve of what you do, and most take the next step and say, is there anything I can do to help? Usually it's people's preconceived notions that they want me to change, and I've come to realize the older I get and the longer I do this, that they're not really asking me to change. It's what it appears, is they say, I don't really like this. I've kind of learned that that's their process of self-discovery. That's their way of working through an issue that is in their heart or in their mind about something that bothers them. Whether they feel about their world needs to be reconciled or changed. And I kind of try to approach that's my job to give some small piece that helps them reconcile that. Whether that changes their position or not, either reinforces it or doesn't. So when people say, I really wish your farm was like this.
Yeah.
That's usually from somebody that doesn't really know my farm, but has something in them that's asking me for a change. Like, we get it from all over things that are seemingly benign to some things that are seemingly aggressive. Like, sometimes you get people saying, well, I don't eat any animal meat and I'm anti that. Sometimes people say, I really wish you were certified organic. So there's really is a big broad spectrum of, I wish you were more this or more that, all of which I say, why don't you come out? And that's always my answer is, come visit, and then we'll see if you think this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. It's always been our push on the farming side is not to have certifications. I don't want other people's seal of approval. I want your seal of approval. Yeah. I don't want the government to say, now stamped and distributed with the USDA label or certified humane. There's lots of those things out there. I'd rather say, my neighbors think it's good, or our community says, I like the way that you do this. That's the seal of approval I want. Nobody else.
No, that's, I think, in a lot of, in the ways that matter, I think that's the most important thing is, yes, people look for the labels for the feel-good factor, but it's almost like from a food standpoint, you could go have some of that and it tastes terrible. When you come out here, and I can attest to it, I know the food is excellent. Everything you guys do is truly what you say. It's like it is huge to have that belief in your product, and the labels don't necessarily mean anything except a stamp on a package.
Right. Well, and this is where I'm hoping to substitute the I know a farmer. Like, if I could make that into a label, that certification, that's the one I'm pursuing with all of our efforts.
That's pretty. You can make stickers. You can do a whole thing with that.
Well, ironically enough, this is usually when I go to speak in front of places or we do big tours out here. It's one of the first things I ask them. Like when you're gathering people together, you're like, "Hey, everybody, you ready to go?" It's kind of my gathering question: is raise your hand if you've ever met a farmer before. And we've toured hundreds of people out here, and I would say I can count on one hand how many people have said yes. And usually they're older. Mm-hmm. If I ask people who are 55 or older, their hands go up. When I ask people that are our age, it's almost zero all the time. So I think that is a reassuring step. On one hand, they don't know what I'm screwing up.
Yeah. No preconceived notions.
Right. On the other hand, I hope that I'm setting a really high bar for every farmer to come after us, because I don't just want to encourage other farmers who think their job is to make a product. Their job is not to make a product. Their job is to make a community.
No, that's night and day difference on all that. I have to start talking to more farmers now. And so it's building that value of the farm and understanding what those true authentic beliefs are, which I'm pretty sure you have. And so you talk about like the people that don't, that are our age group that don't necessarily know a farmer. How do you? I mean, it's not necessarily your job to make it cool, but like how do you make it an inviting place other than the things that you've said? Like just come check it out and see what it is, and you make the decision off of that.
Yeah. It's the other side of what we just talked about, is because people don't really know farmers, their expectations are small, and also they're not just what they expect of us as farms, but they don't see it as a valuable spot in their life. So this is a whole chapter, but talking about creating value from a standpoint just beyond a food value is what I think about when we're talking to those millennials or talking to this age group.
Yeah.
People that have been divorced from the farm, and not just divorced from the farm food, because you'll still see that label everywhere, like farm fresh, right? Mm-hmm. But divorced from the actual insertion into their community. This is where the hard work of being the farm comes off of just making a product, is engaging in that community without that expected monetary return, which is very contrary to my farm peers. It's conventional wisdom that the farmer so long has bought things at retail and sold them at wholesale, they really can't afford to do things that are not maximizing efficiency on the farm, like taking his morning and doing podcasts. Right? Why would you do that sort of thing? Well, because this is how you talk to communities that are beyond just your farm gates and just beyond about food. So that is all on me when I talk about how those millennials start to see value. Well, it's because they have to see my family. So they have to see us. They have to see Jeff. They have to see Renee. They have to see the kids. They have to see that there is an alternative lifestyle, to use that word, that may or may not be for them. Yeah. But it is our job to be community-minded, civic-minded, so that they can say, "This people got something going on. I don't know exactly what it is." And then it's our job to say, well, what it is you have missed out, we have missed out on community, and you're welcome to be part of it. So that's solely on my shoulders, not on them. I don't ever look at how do I attract them to come here. I always find myself being missional about that. Yeah. It's my job to put ourselves out there to say, this is an alternative, things like that. So to make it cool is usually pretty easy once they actually take that step of, hey, what's up? Once they find out what we do, that's usually pretty easy, because that looks like newborn chicks, and baby lambs, and a fresh satsuma off the tree, and oh my gosh, this tastes so good. I mean, that part is really easy.
That's the easy part.
That's the easy part. Yeah. The hard part is making them see your lifestyle, your community mindedness is valuable. And I really find this theme over and over again with people who find us for non-food reasons, is they're alone. They feel very much by themselves. So to have friends, to have community, to have somebody that cares about them, that's kind of been, this farm has been a prescription for many people who are like that. Even people who feel like, I have friends, or I have 3,000 Facebook friends. At the end of the day, they say, feel by myself. So I'm glad to be someplace where there's a big family of people that just happen to be focused around farming.
It's kind of an offshoot from the initial conversation, and that's, I think, actually looking back on it, that's how I found you guys. It was like just Google, and then found the website, and then saw the pictures, and just kind of went through that. And then I think it was through email contact, social media, and built that relationship up front. So I mean, I can definitely attest to that aspect. You do a pretty good job with throwing out the imagery of what it is you guys do and the mission and the why, which, I don't know if you listen to Simon Sinek at all, if you've seen any of his stuff, but like that's what he talks about, is like start with why. And so if you're able to do that, that's humongous, because yes, what you do is farm, but the why is where everybody's going to buy into that belief system. And so, I mean, when you tell your story, and just like you have been, that's humongous. And so you definitely buy that type of stuff.
Well, and, selfishly for my family, this why has come back 1,000-fold for whatever we get in. It's like, we find ourselves that the more that we do this, the more that and I think this is not a unique experience. I think people that join in this whole community concept, right, they will find that stopping and changing into something that's more important, like being community minded, you'll find that you get much more back. Even though you feel like I'm putting all I got into it, at the end you feel like my barrel's empty and it gets filled back up just because of people. We've had a really bad winter to farm. I mean, we've worked through floods and rains and long stretches of really cold weather that's bad for both plants and animals. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, that community showed up. I mean, they showed up in force and said, no, we love you guys. I mean, this is not the same experience that my neighbors who farm cotton have, right? When that cotton plant fails, there's not 1,000 people showing up saying, what can we do to help? Or like, do you need us? That doesn't happen for that farmer. Yeah. What's the difference in his farm and our farm? It's very simple. The difference is community. We don't grow crops. We grow people. That's
not literal people. Like they're not popping out of the ground.
I'm not going to seed.
I mean, that's an interesting way to look at it, and I think you kind of play that into like the future of family farming, and it's like looking at what, I mean, do you guys have ideas of what you look to do, or what, not what other people should do? I don't think you can tell them, but like, what is the future? I mean, you have an opinion, obviously. The future of the family farm, and like any ideas that you guys have there?
Well, the honest assessment is the future of the family farm does not look really bright. I mean, this is something that is, if this does not catch on, the future of the berry farm as a family farm looks bright. As a movement across the country, we stand against really big odds. And those really big odds are organized, they're well funded, they're play much more to our American desire to be fast, busy, and in a silo. So where we're talking about things that are really kind of countercultural. So usually those countercultural movements are not the ones that necessarily break right through the roof. So there are farms like ours all across the country that close because of these same outcomes. Now, I will say part of that is the farm's fault. So the things that the farmer can do is to is the same prescription that I say for other people, say list your find out what your real capital T truths are, and then stop doing those other things. So those farms need to stop doing those things too, as a business, not just as people. So it's one of the things that we've done here is we've stopped doing those things that we think take us away from what our mission is. So I would say for that family farm, if you're starting a family farm or we want to bring other family farms back, first thing is find out what is your capital T truth and then pursue that with all you have. Don't pursue the other things like articles, restaurant menus, bottom line, huge profits. Those are things that will take you away probably from what your capital T truth, why do I do this stuff? Whatever you discover is that truth, don't let anybody talk you out of it. Like, be who you are. That's what we're talking about in the authenticity portion is when you live and act authentically, that community will surround you around those positive values. If you act quasi-authentically, you're going to get a quasi-authentic community. And that quasi-authentic community is not going to be there when you need them because you're not really there for them.
You haven't jumped in full force.
Right.
And I think, I mean, any of these things you can apply to I mean, life, period. It's like a lot of people the 18 people listening to this podcast, they'll tell you that, it's a lot deeper conversation. I think most people thought when they were going to read the title and say, oh, the family farm, which I'm glad that it happened, obviously, and that deeper philosophy in life and understanding, obviously that the why is important and that people are important. And I think, you look for that authenticity, and I think we look at things with such skepticism now. Everything is like, that can't be real, that can't be true. And so to find those kind of bright beacons of authenticity, like the Berry Farm, that become huge. And so obviously they're like a gathering point for people, because it just becomes one of those things like, man, I love this place, I love how real it is, and I love that it's, you see, like, what you see is what you get. That's what I'm trying to say. And I believe that's huge. And so I think, like, any steps for a person to take outside of this is like, what, anything you recommend someone trying to find, maybe they don't live here in the Houston area, which we're in Needville right now. So if you are in the South Houston or Houston area, come check out the Berry Farm. But if you're not and you're looking for your own, what do you recommend?
Well, we did this process when we moved to Houston. So 9 years ago, when we came here, we started looking for authentic community. I will say that it's not easy. This takes effort. So this is another one of those. To be brief here, this is another one of those things that we had to stop to be able to do that. So one of the secrets, in my opinion, to finding authentic community and authentic farms is make space in your regular life. So before we started farming, I will be the first to say I had every day, every evening, every weekend booked with an activity. I was booked solid. And one of the boldest steps I took in my young life was to stop being busy, to plan nothing on purpose. On that day, schedule out a hole and say, I have nothing planned. On that weekend, block it off and say, I have nothing planned. And not to encourage laziness, but to encourage space. And I found that when I made space, what filled it was the things that were aligned with my values. So my values accidentally filled into space. So I ended up making space for things that I really loved on accident when I didn't have space for them before.
It's funny how that works.
So, like, the first thing, my first recommendation is when you're trying to find authenticity is start by finding empty space. And that empty space is under your control. And it's hard because you have to say no to things. And you say, I feel bad to that, but make empty space. Plan empty space on your calendar. Put it on there. And then in that empty space, only let things trickle in that are in your values. It's kind of the seed that started this farm. Is I had empty space. I said we had space to do that, and in that space, expand that after you've entered into that. With that space also needs to be filled with financial discipline in there too. That's another podcast we can talk about another time. But in that space, that's what. Now, to find authentic food is I will say it is impossible to find authentic food without actually having your own boots on somebody else's farm. So this could be easy. This could be Google. This could be email. This could be starting at the farmer's market. Yes, you should buy carrots when you're at that farmer's market, but you should also ask them, is it okay if I come? Can we come visit? Can I bring my family? If the answer is no, buy carrots from somebody else. If your answer is no and you can't find any carrots there, then you're down to where we are, which was, well, then plant your own carrots.
Yeah.
But if authenticity at the end of the day means you have to be the authentic person, then be the authentic person. If it means you can join with somebody else who's already doing it, then by all means join with them. You don't have to reinvent that wheel. So probably in most communities you'll find somebody that's working hard. They're not wildly distributed, but they are doing it right, and they would love nothing more than for you to come alongside them. Authentic livers and authentic people desire community. They won't shun it. So when they say, so if you ask, can I come see your farm? I'm too busy, I really don't do farm tours, or I charge for them, and that's not the person you're looking for. You're looking for the person that says, I very much desire you to be here as much as you want to be there. So start at those places where you think your values will align. For some people, that's a religious place. For some people, that's a business. For some people, that's a farmer's market. It could be all kinds of places that means. But the areas where you say, I find value and truth here, start by leaving space in those areas and then follow up with them by saying, I want to come see how you do this. Because like we talked about here, it is about product. It is about how you do it, but it is also about process. So see that process. And that process isn't how to plant carrots. That process is, what are you thinking while you plant carrots? Why do you do that? Who are you planting them for? I mean, that's the process.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, there are places around here and in different parts, they'll even let you go, like you earn work shares, you know, you go out there and you get to be a part of the process and, you know, impact the growth of certain products and just be involved. At the same time, you might get a box of carrots on your way out the door. And so there are places that do encourage that because you kind of help, you know, I scratch your back, you scratch mine type deal. So definitely, yeah, like you said, put your boots on that farm, walk around, see how they do it, ask questions. So use that skepticism that you may have and use it for your own benefit, because that ultimately, you know, you should want to do things that you enjoy. You should want to eat food you enjoy with, you know, grown by people you trust. And you can't do that without meeting these people, seeing what they do, and seeing the whole picture kind of take place. And then if you're a detailed person, you can see the details. So I mean, it all works up in that way. So definitely action steps. I know you're going to say go visit them. Like 2 questions. If you are at that farmer's market and you maybe not make it to the farm that day, what are like 2 questions you could ask a farmer?
You know, I'll answer the 2 questions, but I just want to put some reassurance out there to the listeners of this, which is those farmers are not afraid of your either negative thoughts, or they are not afraid of meeting you without full knowledge. So you don't have to go home and do all this research and be like, I should know exactly what it takes to plant and grow carrots and what you fertilize. You don't have to have that knowledge. So don't be worried about, I don't have enough knowledge to go visit that farm. I won't even know what I'm looking at. That's that farmer's job. Will help you with that. Mm-hmm. And don't worry about, well, I think I may disagree with. So what if I go out there and I find out that they do something that I don't agree with? That farmer's also not afraid of your disagreement. So I take all of those things into account when we have people on our farm saying, is education is part of my job, also is polite dialogue about what are the differences. So we could talk about all kinds of different ways to raise carrots out here. What kind of varieties? What do you fertilize? What are the options? How do you do? All those things are open for discussion. And the more important thing is that those discussions are happening. But when you're at that farmer's market stand and they say, I never met a farmer before, I never even bought farm carrots, how would I know? What questions do I ask to that farmer? First is, like I always say, is it an option for me to come to your farm? Mm-hmm. Now that's a loaded question, because their no could mean lots of things. Yeah. Their no could mean you're unwelcomed. Their no could mean I'm too busy. Their no could mean I don't have a real farm. You know, but all those no's are put you in categories of. Makes me hesitant, because mm-hmm. I want farmers that are growing community, not ones who are just procuring product. So ask them, is it even an option? I mean, that's my first thing. And then 2, this is a Jeff Smith thing that I ask everywhere. Is there anything I could do for you? So divorce our willingness or our temptation to just talk about those carrots and see those people and say, can I come? Nah, no thank you. We don't really do that. Okay, thank you for the carrots. Can I come? Yeah, we do tours all the time. Whenever you like to send me an email, that's usually the response. And then the next step is, well, what can I do for you? That goes a long way for really busy, hardworking people. Most of the time, they'll tell you, "Oh, I'm good, nothing. So just come visit the farm." But once in a while, you may find that they actually do need something, and that you could fill that gap. And what's happened in that moment there is the spark of community. Mm-hmm. That's what's happened there. So that I ask people everywhere I go, from the ladies that check me out at the grocery store to when I went, one of the best dear friends we made recently is a guy at Fort Bend Coffee Roasters. That relationship started because I was buying coffee from him at the farmer's market. I said to him, is there anything I can do to help you? And you would have thought I had just offered him the world, but he was taken aback by that somebody would actually want to join him. It goes beyond. That's what goes beyond the product and says, I want to be in this with a farmer. I want to be in this with the community. What can I do? So start by being giving rather than being superior to be the consumer. Those are my 2 questions. Is, can I come? Anything I can do?
Yeah, and I mean, I'll again attest to something else you just said. I know that was one of the things at the beginning of our relationship. It was like, hey, look, is there anything I can help you with? And you've been very persistent, in any way you can help us, whether it's with obviously filming or recording this podcast, letting us do dinners, or coming out and speaking to our community, and being a huge part of our food system. I mean, like that's why we've dubbed you the official farm of PB&Gainz podcast, and just because. We truly believe in what you do, and then understanding that it can benefit the lives of so many other people just off product alone, but then at the same time, the community that they can envelop themselves in is unmatched, I think, in probably at least the Houston area. I'm sure there's some good farms elsewhere. I just haven't been there yet. So we're going to wrap it up. I know I asked you this before we started recording. If you have a good quote that people can chew on, I'll give you a few minutes to think about it as you talk. But
well. To sum up my thoughts in like a one-liner is not easy for a guy like me,
Yeah.
to make it so big. But that there's a quote hanging on our wall that I wish I could take a picture of it. But it is how we've lived not only our life but our marriage for Renee and I on there. And it's a quote from my father, the esteemed Reverend Charles L. Smith. And the quote is, "Life is for the living, not the pondering." And if I ever get a tattoo, that's probably going to be the first one. But that's my quote. Life's for the living, not the pondering. That's my dad's way of... We had this. I'll tell you this background of that quote. Renee and I had been dating for a couple months, 3 months. And I said to him, we're both sitting in his living room, and I say, hey, we think maybe we want to get married. But kind of feel like we haven't been dating long enough. We've only been dating a couple months. Like, don't you have to do this for a long? Shouldn't we date for a year?
Yeah, a 10-year courtship.
Yeah, shouldn't we do this? And that was my dad's response. Well, life's for the living, not the pondering. And ever since then, it was my permission from somebody that I look up to a lot to say, it's okay, get out there and live this life. And it's what takes the stop. It's the other equation. The next podcast we do, it's the other equation from the value of the stop. Mm-hmm. Now what?
That's pretty good. That's good. And yeah, it's we tend to overthink things. It's I dated my wife for I think probably close to 10 years before we got married. Granted, we were in high school when we met, so we had a long ways to go. But so especially you can, and just because this is the purpose of the podcast, we'll bring it back to food. It's we will think and think and think and think and think and never make a better decision because we're always worried about the consequences, or we are afraid of the benefits. Where could that lead us? What if we do go to a farm? Well, that's time that we have to give up. It's well, what if you didn't go? So I think that's a great one, and you should get that tattoo. I keep trying to convince my wife I need a sleeve. She doesn't like the idea. I'll probably get fired for it, but oh well.
Well, I do have a long list of Reverend Charles Smith quotes.
You just turn it into a whole thing.
Yeah.
Nice piece of artwork. All right. Well, that is episode 3 of the PB&Gainz podcast. You said you reached out to people on community. How can people find you?
It's easy to find us. If you put our name in a Google search, we'll be the first one that comes up at the Berry Farm or at the Berry Farm Houston. But you can find us also on Instagram and on Facebook and Twitter. You can follow along. I also write a blog that talks more about the why than I talk. When you find our pictures on Instagram, you'll see a little more about the what. And you see our thing on Facebook, you find a little bit more about the why. But if you really want to talk about these kind of things, I kind of confine them to the blog that we do at the berryfarm.com. You'll see a lot more of my musings and unpacking about community and why we do what we do. You also see some cute pictures of baby lambs on the blog and stuff.
Everybody likes that, yeah. Lambs are nice.
That's where you get my opinion. So if you just want to look at the pictures of the farm, I love that.
You can mute him out. You don't have to listen to what he says.
Right. But if you want to be want to talk to a crazy lunatic farmer, you can do that on the blog.
I'll talk to Joel Salatin if I want that. That is the Berry Farm. We're talking all community farm. Go check out the blog. It is a very well written blog, and it gives you a lot of insight into the mind of a guy who is changing a lot of how the Houston area sees food. I know he's changed our gym community, and that's been a pretty cool thing to watch unfold. So go check him out. Google him, search him, come out to his farm, email him, and let him know you're coming first. I think that is all we have today. So today's Gainz tip is go to a farm. enjoy it. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening and giving us some of your time. We know it's valuable, so we're glad you spent it with us. So that has been episode 3, interviewing Jeffrey Smith at the Berry Farm. Incredible dude. I can only imagine how much you guys enjoyed that. I enjoyed it as well, and I know he's going to be on a lot more in the future. So check him out, berryfarm.com. Check us out at avenuefit.com. There is no E in Avenue, so check that out. Or if you're on Twitter, PB&Gainz with a Z. You can check that out on Twitter. That'll be us, man. We will see you guys in a couple weeks. Thank you for listening.